Hello everyone, this is Eunice Major Milani and my partner Angie Cashano, and we will be reporting about the introduction to t-test. In this lesson, we will teach you what is a t-test, how to calculate a t-value, and how to calculate a t-test. So what is exactly a t-test? So a t-test is a statistical test that compares the means of two samples. It is used in hypothesis testing with a null hypothesis that the difference in group means is zero, and an alternative hypothesis that the difference in group means is different from zero. It's hard to understand, right? Because all of the complicated words. So in short, a t-test is a statistic that checks if two means or average are reliably different from each other. For example, if each of us are going to flip a coin 100 times and you get 50 tails and I get 49 tails, does that means you get more tails than me, and in the future you will get more tails than me? So, or is it only by chance? And so, question: why not look at the means? Look at the means may show a difference, but we can't be sure if that is a reliable difference. Just what I said, maybe that difference was only by chance. We cannot know, so we will use a t-test. So how did t-test got its name? T-distribution, also known as students' t-distribution, got its name from William Seeley Gossett, who first published it in English in 1908 in the scientific journal Biometrica. He was using the pseudonym student because at the time he was working in Guinness and his employer preferred his staff to use pen names when publishing scientific papers. Just like most of the writers nowadays, they are using pseudonyms or pen names.
Good day everyone. Today I'll show you what the t-test is, how to calculate the t-value, run a t-test, and then finally how to do a t-test using a spreadsheet. So imagine I have two fields of barley, field 1 and field 2. And I want to compare them, but I don't want to cut the whole field. I want to do some samples. Now, which one of these has a higher field? We could have a different distributions, and depending on the distribution within that sample, there could be a statistically significant difference between the two or not. And that's where the t-value comes in handy. T-value is the ratio of signal and noise. Signals is going to be the numbers that tell me the difference between these two samples. The noise is the random or unwanted variation that interferes the signal. So, how do we figure out the signal? The easiest way to do that is to simply find the difference between the two means. So, this is the means. And so, if we calculate the mean and sample 1, we'll call that x bar 1 and x bar 2. The difference between the two is going to tell you how much signal there is. And how do we figure out the noise? That's going to be the variability of the groups themselves. So the factor is going to look like this. S1 is the standard deviation and then is squared na to siya, and that gives us the variance. Kaning n mo ni siya ang number of samples. So let me show you how to calculate the t-value. The first thing we have to do is to figure out the mean. So, and to get the mean, i-type lang nato ang ni siya equals average, then parenthesis, and then i-select nato ang entire sample set, and then makuha nato ang mean na 15.38. Then kung sa gibuhat na to sa field 1, same lang gyapon sa field 2 to get the mean. The next is the standard deviation. Ang i-type kay equals ST DEV, then parenthesis, then iselect yapon nato ang entire sample set to find out para makuha nato ang standard deviation na 0.3. Then same ra gyapon sa field 2 nga to ra gyapon buhaton. The next kay ang variance. To do that, we have to square the standard deviation. So katong last to gibuhat kaning second na to nga kuha, i-type na to ang equals, then i-select ang standard deviation cell, and bring it to the second power. And then makuha na to siya ang answer. Then same ra gyapon sa field 2. Last kay ang pila ka book data atong gina-collect. Just type equals count, then parenthesis, then i-select ang entire set para makuha ang answer. So the answer is 16. Naa naman tay answer, so we simply going to plug it into my t-value. This is the means, the variance, and katong pila ka book data atong na-collect. First is the difference of the signal, and then i-divide ni sila, and then add. So the answer is 0.30 over 0.13, and the answer is 2.3. So 2.3 is our t-value. So after nato makuha ang t-value, we're going to run a t-test. We're testing our null hypothesis that says there is no significant difference between the sample. So if ang atong t-value is higher than the critical value, we reject our null hypothesis. But if our t-value is lower than the critical value, we don't reject our null hypothesis. So unsa nato pagkuha ang critical value? To do that, we'll use a t-table. Generally in science, we'll use the 0.5 probability. So here, and then after, we'll figure out the degrees of freedom, and degrees of freedom mao na siya ang sample sa N1 and N2. So N1 and N2 minus 2, since we took 16 from each, it's going to be 32 minus 2, or 30 degrees of freedom. So ang 30 na adere, then i-line. So ang answer kay 2.042. And since our t-value is higher than the critical value, we're going to reject our null hypothesis. That means there is something statistically significant between these two samples. We can also calculate t-test using a spreadsheet. What we're going to do is type equals, then t-test, and there are 4 things we have to put in for a t-test. The first one is the entire sample set, from field 1, then comma, then sa field 2, another comma, and then ibutang ang duha ka 2 here. So the answer is 0.026. Does that mean it's slightly above 0.025 and somewhere in between 0.05? So what does that mean? In just a few seconds, we're able to realize that we need to reject the null hypothesis. It's really simple in spreadsheet to do a t-test very quickly.
Thank you, Angie. Now, What is p-value? The p-value is the probability that a pattern of data in the sample could be produced by a random data. Just like what I said earlier, it determines whether the result or the difference between the means is only by chance or not. Here we see that what p-value is accepted. So it's a margin of error, I guess. Like 55% margin of error is okay, 1% margin of error okay, or the probability of error is okay. But 10% of or probability of error is not okay. Here are the types of t-tests, which are independent sample, paired sample, and one sample. Independent sample. It tests the means of two different groups. For example, testing the scores of students from two different classrooms. So, like the example kanina, the fields, there are two different fields, then you test the difference of the two groups, the field A and B. So it is also called between samples and an unpaired samples t-test. Paired sample. This tests the means of one group twice. Example testing stakes before and after aging it. Also called within subject repeated measures and dependent samples. Another example of it is you getting drunk. Testing your balance first when you haven't drunk anything. Then after you have drunk something, after a few minutes, then try to test your balance. That's an example of paired sample. Last but not least is one sample. It tests the means of one group against a set mean. For example, testing the IQ of your classmates against the average IQ of the world. So there is a set, there is a set sample of the world. So you have a sample yourself. You compare it to the sample or a set mean. In this case, the a sample or the average of the IQ of the world, of the people in the world. That would be all. Thank you.